Namaskar, friends. Let me tell you something about Eric Arthur Blair today. Lifespan 25 June 1903 to 21st January 1950. Better known by his pen name George Orwell. I'm sure you've heard his name. He was an English novelist, essayist, journalist, and a critic. His work is prominent by his lucid prose, his fancy for social injustice, opposition to totalitarianism, and outspoken support for democratic socialism. Very few would know that George Orwell was born in Motihari in Bihar in the British India. Yes, I'm right. Let's refer to him as George or Orwell or George Orwell in this conversation that I'm having. As a writer, George produced literary criticism, poetry, fiction, and polemical journalism. He is best known for his allegorical novella Animal Farm, written way back in 1945, and the dystopian novel 1984, written in 1949. This is also way back. His non-fiction works include The Road to Wigan Pier, written in 1937, documenting his experience of the working class in the north of England and his homage to Catalonia in 1938, an account of his experiences soldiering for the Republic faction of the Spanish Civil War that was in 1936 to 1939, are as critically respected as his essay on politics, literature, language, and culture. The Times ranked George Orwell second among the 50 greatest British writers since 1945. The book I liked the most out of George's stable was The Burmese Days, written in the backdrop of Burma during the British Raj. Since the book was centrally anti-British, I would say, and publishes his opposition to totalitarianism, it didn't get prominence that it deserved. Because in that book there is a club in which all these members are there. Most of them are British, and they want to induct an Indian, for which there is a lot of resistance in the club. Orwell's book continues to remain influential and popular in various political and social cultures. The adjective Orwellian that we all know describes totalitarianism and authoritarian social practices, is part of the English language, like many of his other neologisms, such as Big Brother, Thought Police, Hate Week, Room 101, The Memory Hole, Newspeak, Doublethink, Proles, Unperson, and Thought Crime. So all these are out of him. George Orwell described his family as lower upper middle class. His father, Richard Blair, worked in the opium department of the Indian Civil Service. His mother, Ida Mabel Blair, grew up in Moulmein, Burma, where her French father was involved in speculative ventures. George had two sisters, Marjorie, 5 years older, and Avril, 5 years younger. When George was 1 year old, his mother took him and Marjorie to England. His birthplace and ancestral house in Motihari have since been declared a protected monument of historical importance. In 1904, Ida Blair settled with her children at Henley-on-Thames in Oxfordshire. George was brought up in the company of his mother and his sisters, and apart from a brief visit in mid 1907, the family did not see their husband or father Richard Blair until 1912. His mother's diary from 1905 describes a lively round of social activity and artistic interests. Before the First World War, the family moved to Shiplake, Oxfordshire, where Orwell became friendly with Buddicombe family, especially their daughter Jacintha. When they first met, he was standing on his head in the field. On being asked why, he replied, you are noticed more if you stand on your head than if you are right way up." Jacinta and Orwell read and wrote poetry and dreamed of becoming famous writers. At the age of 5, George was sent as a day boy to a convent school in Henley-on-Thames, which Marjorie also attended. It was a Roman Catholic convent run by French Ursuline nuns who had been exiled from France after religious education was banned in 1903. His mother wanted him to have a public school education, but his family could not afford the fee and he needed to earn a scholarship for that. Ida Blair's brother Charles Limousine recommended St. Cyprian's School, Eastbourne, East Sussex. He later took up a place at Wellington where he spent spring term. In May 1917, a place became available at King's Scholar at Eton. John remained at Eton until December 1921, when he left midway between his 18th and 19th birthday. Wellington was beastly, George told his childhood friend Jacintha Buddicombe, and he was interested and happy at Eton. George was briefly taught French even by Aldous Huxley, that famous author. George's academic reports suggest that he neglected his academic studies, but during his time at Eton, he worked with Roger Minors to produce a college magazine. His parents could not afford to send him to a university without another scholarship, and they concluded from his poor results that he would not be able to win one. Stephen Runciman, a friend, noted that he had romantic ideas about the East, and the family decided that George should join the Imperial Police, the precursor of the Indian Police Service. For this, he had to pass an entrance examination. In December 1921, he left Eton and travelled to join his retired father, mother, and younger sister, Avril, who that month had moved to 40 Stradbroke Road, Southwark, Suffolk, the first of their 4 homes in the town. George was enrolled at a crammer there called Craighurst, and brushed upon his classics, English and history. He passed the entrance exam, coming 7th out of the 26 candidates who exceeded the pass mark. George's maternal grandmother lived at Molmen, Burma, so he chose a posting in Burma, which was then a province of British India. In October 1922, he sailed on board SS Herefordshire via Suez Canal, and Ceylon to join the Indian Imperial Police in Burma. A month later, he arrived at Rangoon and travelled all the way to the police station training school in Mandalay. He was appointed as Assistant District Superintendent on probation on 29 November 1922, with effect from 27th November, and at a basic salary of rupees 325 per month, with an overseas supplement of rupees 125 per month and a Burma allowance. Those days we had you had Burma allowance of rupees 75 per month, a total of rupees 525. After a short posting at Mayo, Burma's principal hill station, he was posted to the frontier outpost of Myong Mya in Irrawaddy Delta at the beginning of 1924. In April 1926, he moved to Molmen, where his maternal grandmother lived. At the end of that year, he was assigned to Katha in Upper Burma, where he contracted dengue fever in 1927. Can you beat it? Dengue is that old. Entitled to leave in England that year, he was allowed to return in July due to his illness. While on leave in England and on holiday with his family in Cornwall in September 1927, he reappraised his life, deciding against returning to Burma. He thought enough is enough, I better stay back in England now. So he decided against returning to Burma. He resigned from the Indian Imperial Police to become a writer with effect from 12th March 1928. After 5.5 years of rigorous service, he drew on his experiences in the Burma police for the novel Burmese Days, which happens to be my favorite novel of his, which he wrote in the year 1934, and the essays Hanging in 1931 and Shooting an Elephant in 1936. So, if you friends, you will see a lot of his writing has got that Burmese touch. In England, he settled back in the family home at Southwold, renewing acquaintance with his local friends and attending an old Etonian dinner. He visited his old tutor Gow at Cambridge for advice on becoming a writer. In 1927, he moved to London. In early 1928, he moved to Paris. He was very mobile. In December 1929, after nearly 2 years in Paris, George returned to England and went directly to his parents' house in Southwold, a coastal town in Suffolk, which remained his base for the next 5 years. In April 1932, in April 1932, George Orwell became a teacher at the Hawthorns High School, school for boys in Hayes, West London. This was a small school offering private schooling for children of local tradesmen and shopkeepers, and had only 14 to 16 boys aged between 10 to 16 and one other schoolmaster. While at school, he became very friendly with the curate of a local parish church and became involved with activities there. There he joins hands in the publishing of a Scullion's diary for £40 advance. At the end of summer term in 1932, Blair returns to Southwold, where his parents had used a legacy to buy their own home. Blair and his sister Avril spend the holidays making the house habitable while he works on his novel Burmese Days. He was also spending time with Elena Jacks, but her attachment with Dennis Collins remained an obstacle to his hopes of a more serious relationship. He later takes up a job in Hampstead to sell second-hand books. George Orwell sets out for Spain on about 23rd December 1936. So he travels again, dining with Henry Miller in Paris on the way. He returns to England in June 1937 and stays at the O'Shaughnessy home at Greenwich. He finds his views on the Spanish Civil War out of favor. Many people don't like it. Publishers reject two of his works. He later publishes Animal Farm in 1945 and 1984 in the year 1949. So friends, 1984 is actually a title of his novel. Orwell was an atheist who identified himself with the humanist outlook on life. And friends, one last point I would like to make is it is sad when you discover many of these iconic writers of the past have seen very sad and bad times financially, yet they kept writing. And perhaps that is the reason they still shine like bright stars. So that's all for today. Goodbye and see you soon.